everybody. Today we're doing something a little different. And by different, I mean I'm focusing on another author's story. The Dresden Files, particularly Book 3, Grave Peril, got it wrong. Dresden is innocent. Bianca was the one who broke hospitality, and in doing so brought destruction upon herself. It's all in the pages. Welcome to C Story Corner. Yes, you heard me right. The book got it wrong. Dresden didn't start the war between the Red Court vampires and the wizards. Bianca did, by breaking the code of hospitality. Not only this, she broke the code thrice in one night, thus bringing about her own destruction. What am I talking about? Continue watching to find out. With two, count them, two, new Dresden books coming out this year, one of which is already available, my husband and I started rereading the series from the beginning, because it's awesome, fun, and has amazing characters. This story also has a particular soft spot in my heart, because my husband read it to me after my brain injury. I've always been an avid reader, even when I couldn't find stories I enjoyed, but after my head got bounced around a bit, I couldn't focus, and my short-term memory was shot. I really missed reading, but whenever I tried, I either couldn't remember or understand what I read. But listening as my husband read to me really helped my brain, and I was able to start writing again, and eventually start reading on my own. All this said, when he first read the series to me, there was a part in Grave Peril, Book 3, where Dresden is said to have broken hospitality during the Red Court vampire coronation of Bianca. I guess I should stop here and say, there are spoilers, so if you haven't read this series, I'd highly suggest reading it. It's amazing. Now, continuing on. Anyway, I couldn't figure out why Dresden's blamed for breaking hospitality, and by extension the resulting war, when Bianca was clearly the one who broke it. The first time I brought this up, my dear hubby just smiled at my poor broke-brained self and pointed out it's clearly written intent doesn't matter, only action, and continued on. And me understanding that because of my broken brain, there was a bunch of stuff I probably missed and didn't get, accepted that and let him move on with the rest of the story. But, as we've read through recently, we got back to that point, and I find myself irritated because it doesn't make sense that Dresden gets the blame. It just feels forced because of plot, which is something that annoys me in writing. Still not being able to see where Dresden broke hospitality, and my brain no longer being quite as broken as before, I brought it up to my hubby again, which led to a fun debate while enjoying our evening walk. When we got home, we read through the passage again, much more carefully, and amazingly, I was right. Yay! Score 1 for my poor little brain. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why believe some nobody who's said multiple times their brain doesn't work as well as it should, over the writer who created this world, characters, and events, then wrote it out and all the betas and countless other readers who haven't noticed? Easy. I can prove it. But first, what's hospitality? Hospitality is an old world code of honor that guarantees courtesy, safety, and various agreed-on privileges to guests within the supernatural community. For this particular event, the invitation specifically promised safety to Dresden and one guest during the coronation. Now, for a little setup of the scene I'll be discussing. Dresden, representing the White Council, which is the wizard community, is in Bianca's manor for her ball, celebrating her being made a Margraven, and has been promised the protection of hospitality for himself and one guest. His guest is Michael, who, simply put, is a holy soldier of the Lord. While there, they form a tentative alliance with Thomas, the representative of the White Court vampires, and his guest, Justine. There's also a lady named Susan, who's Dresden's girlfriend. Unlike the others, however, she had no right to be there. She falsified an invitation, meaning she has absolutely no claim to the protections of hospitality. There are also countless vampires, mostly Red Court, but some Black Court, as well as a few other guests, but they don't really do much in this scene. Now, there's another fun little rule among the vampire community that plays a major role in the events to come. The biggest thing for determining fault is that intent doesn't matter. Just the active event that actually blows things up. Pretty much, it doesn't matter who put the dominoes in place, or how many people wanted to knock them over. The one who actually knocked over the tile is the one at fault. So, I'm stating right now, based on this rule and what's written in the book, Dresden did not break hospitality. Bianca did. Now, don't get me wrong, He had every intention of breaking the hospitality to protect Michael, Susan, and an innocent girl who was about to be killed by a magic sword that was stolen from Michael and given to the Black Court vampires to pressure Dresden into breaking hospitality. But he didn't. So let's start there in the text. This is the very end of chapter 29 of Grave Peril. Dresden calls back to Susan and, quote, "Stay behind me, Susan." I clenched my teeth. I guess I'm going to do the right thing. Then the chapter ends. The very beginning of the next chapter is a couple paragraphs of Dresden thinking about war. Then, quote, "A tide of vamps came toward us. They rushed in, animals swift, a blur of twisting, bulging faces and staring black eyes. Their jaws hung far too open, fangs bared, hissing and howling." Okay. They've been rushed, but no one's laid a finger on anyone else, just a lot of threatening to do so. Hospitality has not been broken, but it's all on a razor's edge. Continuing on, one of them held a long spear and shoved it towards Thomas's pale belly. At this point, Bianca does absolutely nothing to stop the attack, and this is where hospitality is broken. Only it's been broken toward the White Court vampires, not the White Council, which Dresden is there representing. Because Bianca doesn't raise a finger to protect Thomas or his guest, as was promised in the invitation, she has broken hospitality toward the White Court vampires, as their safety was guaranteed while under her roof during this event. But it continues on. They keep attacking Thomas for a bit, then the focus changes to another character. Quote, "Michael caught a descending machete's blade on the metal guard of his forearm." Okay, now Dresden's guest has been harmed, and Bianca continues doing nothing to ensure their safety. And by continuing to do nothing, she has now broken hospitality towards Dresden and the White Council of Wizards. But it gets worse for Bianca's case. Quote, "Michael!" I shouted. I tried to push toward him, but found myself jostled aside. I saw him struggle and drop to one knee, saw vampires shoving knives at him, and fangs, teeth tearing. At this point, the vampires pretty much full-on swarm Michael. Next, quote, "Kyle Hamilton appeared across the dog pile over the fallen knight. He bared his fangs at me and lifted a semi-automatic." Okay, let's pause. At this point, Dresden's guest is being viciously attacked, and he's non-violently trying to reach Michael to protect him. Bianca hasn't lifted a finger to protect her guest she promised protection to. Then Kyle Hamilton, one of Bianca's goons, appears and points a gun at Dresden. Granted, it hasn't been fired yet, so it's still just intent, but hospitality has already been broken toward the White Council. Dresden now has every right to defend himself and his guest, which he does. Before Kyle can shoot him, Dresden casts Vente Ferro, but like I said, it doesn't matter that Dresden fires off some magic before being shot, because hospitality was broken when Michael was attacked and Bianca didn't sweep in to protect him. And why does any of this matter? Because the whole point of this setup was to get Dresden to break hospitality so that the Red Court vampires had a legitimate excuse to finally go to war with the White Council wizards. At this point, the war is definitely Bianca's fault. She has failed, and the Red Court vampires don't have any legitimate excuse to start the war. Though both the White Court vampires and the White Council of Wizards do if they so wished. But that's not the whole story, some of you avid fans will probably say. And you're right, it's not the whole story. It gets worse for Bianca. During this fight, everything devolves into chaos, because it's Dresden, so of course it does. It wouldn't be fun without it. But during the chaos, Michael and Dresden manage to escape, as does Thomas, but we don't see that for a few pages. However, Susan, Dresden's girlfriend, is kidnapped by the Red Court vampires. And this is completely fair. She forged an invitation to a vampire coronation, and came uninvited and not under the protection of hospitality. The Red Court, according to their rules, has every right to do whatever they want to her. It was her own fault for being stupid enough to break into a partying nest of vampires. So everything that happens to her is her own fault, and Dresden has no right to do anything to try and rescue her. Which we all know he's going to do anyway. This in turn ultimately leads to him breaking into Bianca's place and completely destroying it. So, wouldn't him later breaking into Bianca's and destroying her home then be him assaulting her and her household, making him at fault for the war anyway? Nope. But it does make Bianca further at fault for the ensuing war, and here's how. Susan wasn't the only one kidnapped by Bianca. So was Justine, who was invited and promised the protection of hospitality. But just because Thomas has the right to break in and demand his guests back, doesn't mean Dresden does, right? Correct. Neither Dresden nor the White Council has any say in what happens concerning Justine or Susan. But after escaping, Michael and Dresden are at his place licking their wounds when Thomas shows up begging for their help rescuing Justine. As you may guess, Dresden accepts the pleas. Only Dresden isn't working on behalf of the White Council. As soon as he escaped Bianca's manor, he was no longer representing the White Council of Wizards. However, the moment he accepted Thomas's request for help, he was then working for the White Court vampires. Any war with the Red Court vampires that comes from the next encounter is only justifiable between the Red and White Court vampires. The Wizards have nothing to do with this anymore. And yet, even the second time going into her place, it's Bianca who breaks hospitality. She broke it initially by choosing not to protect her guests. She broke it again when she kidnapped the protected guest of the White Court vampires. She then breaks it a third time during the Rescue Justine arc. With Thomas and Michael's assistance, Dresden is able to get into Bianca's manor from the Never Never. Only Bianca is waiting for them. Stuff happens that doesn't directly apply to the topic at hand. Then Dresden finds himself in a room with Justine and Susan. Some fun discoveries take place, and Dresden manages to get them out of the room and find his various equipment that was stripped from him. Yeah, I know. Skipping stuff that doesn't pertain to assigning fault here. Read the book for all that. Eventually he makes his way, with only Justine following behind, as Susan has disappeared, so she's not even part of the equation. That could have put a little kink in my argument. Yay! And they come upon Bianca in a large chamber with both her vampire minions and a bunch of heavily armed humans all pointing guns at him. A tiny bit of banter happens, then she orders the gun wielders to fire. So, let's take a moment to mull this over as I repeat myself again. Bianca broke the code of hospitality the first time, by not protecting her guests. She broke it a second time by kidnapping a guest she failed to protect in the first place. Then, when Dresden and the boys show up to rescue Justine, all working for the White Court vampires, and at this point having nothing to do with the Wizard Council, she almost immediately orders her goonies to fire. But they broke into Bianca's home, you might say. Well, according to the obligations of hospitality, if it is broken, the code rules that the issue is then settled face to face. Taking this at the letter, as vampires always do, means Dresden and company didn't break in. They came in the only safe way they could to demand the code of hospitality be enforced. Instead of it being honored, they were assaulted by a number of things, some of the stuff I left out. Then Bianca ordered her people to gun them down, meaning she broke hospitality a third time by refusing to abide by the consequences of breaking the code of hospitality. 3 times. 3 times in one night and in 3 different ways she broke the code of hospitality. And anyone who's read this series knows that doing something thrice has big consequences. But there wasn't any. Or was there? This is probably just me needing to bring sense to this world, but I'd like to argue that what comes next happens because Bianca thrice in one night broke the code of hospitality. Okay, what am I talking about, right? Well, after all the guns start blasting and Dresden uses his magic bracelet to deflect the bullets and shoot back some fire, something interesting happens. He doesn't have much power left, but there's a bunch of ghosts who would be more than happy to help out. With what little power he has, he offers it to the ghosts of Bianca's victims. These ghosts, who are only there because Bianca and her crew had killed them over the years, take that energy, which is enough to fully manifest and attack Bianca and all those with her, allowing Dresden, Justine, and Susan to escape. The ghosts rise up and destroy the manor and everyone inside, while Dresden and company make it to safety. So even the fall of Bianca isn't on Dresden. It's on Bianca, by thrice breaking the code of hospitality, and by years of murdering people whose ghosts have stuck around, waiting to resolve their unfinished business. And a couple other reasons, but you should read the book for that. Yes, Dresden had every intention of getting out of the house alive with his peeps, whatever it took. But he didn't do anything to the Red Court directly. He didn't knock over any of the dominoes. So he's in no way responsible for this event either, according to vampire rules. The ending of the book is simply the consequence of Bianca breaking hospitality 3 times in one night. Now, the vampires wanting to blame Dresden so they can have their war, fine, but the White Court vampires among other guests were there as witnesses that this was a lie. Insisting it was Dresden, and by extension the White Council's fault, would have brought even more shame upon the Red Court. Even if it was just Dresden blaming himself for what happened. Totally understandable and a powerful addition to his character. But believing something isn't the same as it being true. However, the White Council of Wizards blaming Dresden is total BS. It's in the White Council's best interest to call the Red Court out on their lies to save countless wizards. But they don't. They just blame Dresden because of plot. And not just blame him, but some actively use it as a way to sacrifice Dresden to the Red Court, when according to vampire rules and what happened, it's obviously not Dresden who was in the wrong. This is probably the only thing about this amazing series that irritates me. Though honestly, in the end, the rest of the series is so good, it's by no means a deal breaker. Besides, it'd take little to no adjustment to make the rest of the story happen the way it does anyway. So, no big deal. I just wanted to get this off my chest. But what do you think? Am I completely wrong? Should I be assuming that Dresden attacked first, and it's just not mentioned in the book? Am I thinking too deeply into this? Or is my brain completely broke, and there's no hope for me? If you haven't read this series, then do so, and tell me your thoughts in the comments. If you have read it, tell me your thoughts in the comments, then read it again, because it's fun and awesome. As always, thank you so very much for your time. Stay safe and healthy, everyone.